Hi, and welcome to Excel Heaven. This tutorial is the second in a series exploring the use of subtotals in Excel. The previous tutorial introduced the concept of subtotals and outline levels. We will now build on that to look at some other circumstances where subtotal can simplify reporting challenges. You may recall that in the previous example we were able to use automatic subtotaling to summarize balances. However, the subtotal dialog only works vertically, but what happens if the data is arranged horizontally? The data in this sheet is the same as the previous sheet, but it is arranged horizontally by month. What is now required is to include quarterly subtotals in addition to an annual total. To begin with, I can calculate account subtotals as before. On the Data ribbon, under the Outline group, I select Subtotal. At each change in account name, I want the sum of, and here I can tick all the months. I now have to insert blank columns for each quarter. To calculate quarter 1, with G2 selected, I type equal SU, and all the functions starting with SU are displayed. Double-clicking on Subtotal selects it and displays the parameters required, the first being the function number. From the drop-down, you can see that 9 represents the sum, as discussed previously. A comma brings us to the second parameter, the reference. I can simply highlight January to March and finish with a closed bracket. I can now copy this function down to the other rows for quarter 1. But something appears to be wrong. At each vertical subtotal level, I am getting a blank in the quarter. So what's wrong? Looking back at the original sheet, the grand total line includes all cells in the column, including other subtotals. The fundamental thing about subtotal is that it ignores other subtotals in the range, and that is why it is so useful. If we now look at the subtotal for the cost of sales for quarter 1, we can see that the cells it is referencing are all themselves subtotals, and that is why it is returning 0. To correct this, I need to include all the cells these individual subtotals themselves reference. That is, to extend a range from just D6 to F6 to include D2 to F6. I can now copy this down to the other account quarters. Similarly, the grand total for quarter 1 should include all cells from D2 to F22. If I now collapse the data to outline level 2, I can verify that all cells are calculating correctly. I can now copy quarter 1 functions to the other quarters, and because the structure of each quarter is the same, I have no problem. If you happen to use 13 4-week periods, one quarter will have 4 instead of 3 periods, and you will have to adjust for that. However, the annual total is obviously incorrect. Clicking on one of the calculations, I can see that, as for the quarterly calculations, it is looking at the previous 3 columns, starting with Q. But because this is the annual figure, it should of course start from column D. The easiest way to correct this is to select the column and, on the Home ribbon, in the Editing group, under Find and Select, select Replace. Then replace Q with D. Let's just take a moment to review what we now have. If we look at any account at region level for the quarter, we can see that it is calculating the subtotal for the 3 months in the quarter. If we look at the account level, it includes all cells included in that quarter. At grand total level, regions span a single row. Accounts include all cells for the account, and the final total includes the whole table. If I now collapse the report to outline level 2, you can see that we are almost there. It would be nice, however, if we could use outline along the horizontal to only display the quarters, and of course we can. With January to March selected, on the Data ribbon, Under the outline group, select Group. Do the same for the other 3/4. Then select January through to Q4 and group again for the grand total. I now have outlines along both the vertical and horizontal. Selecting level 2 on each produces a nice concise report, but all the underlying data is only a click or two away. In addition, clicking on individual plus signs allows us to focus on particular figures. How awesome is that? Clicking on minus collapses it again. Looking at the spreadsheet, there is one further improvement I would like to make. Currently, it is hard to tell which cells contain figures and which contain functions. It is recommended that cell formatting be used to help identify the structure of a spreadsheet. This will help ensure that functions you have lovingly created are not accidentally overwritten with figures by someone. Cell styles make this easy, but I need to identify which cells contain figures. First, select all the figures. On the Home ribbon, under the Editing group, find and select Go to Special. To be honest, this is a favorite of mine. In this case, I'm going to select Constants. You can see that only the values are selected and all the functions I entered are ignored. Now, under the Styles group, select the drop-down. Included in this group are various predefined styles, including headers, different color options, and data formats. I'm going to choose Input. Now we can see what's actually going on. Theoretically, what I should do now is to right-click and select Format Cells. On the Protection tab, untick Locked. Then, on the Review ribbon, in the Changes group, select Protect Sheet. Don't bother with a password. The effect of this is that while you can still enter figures into any input cell, you are prevented from doing so in any other cell. So you can't override your functions. But here's the rub. Another thing it also protects is the outline. So I have a problem. In this case, I would prefer to leave the protection off and keep the formatting as a reminder of where the inputs go, but it really depends on who is going to use the model. You can always unprotect the sheet, use the outline to distribute the report, and then protect again if there is danger that functions will be overwritten. In summary, in this tutorial we have looked at manually subtotaling and grouping columns to produce outline levels on the horizontal axis. We also saw how cell styles can be used to distinguish input cells from calculated cells, and the merits of using sheet protection to prevent the overwriting of functions. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to Excel Heaven for other tutorials.